Oh, we're already recording. Excellent. Oh boy. Well,
Off to a good start.
I'm going to leave all of my sneezes and nose blowing in just for everyone's listening pleasure, I think.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that.
Because this is, after all, Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and blow our noses too. I'm Lilly.
And I'm Sara.
And, my great thing this week is that I am less sick than I was last week. And that's the kind of week we're having right now.
I'm very glad that you are less sick, but that does also imply that you were quite sick.
Oh, I basically slept like 20 hours a day for like 3 days last week. I would wake up to do a meeting for work and then just go back to sleep.
I mean, I'm impressed that you did meetings at all.
I didn't go on camera. That would have been miserable.
I'm still impressed that you did meetings at all.
I was reclined in bed underneath an electric blanket and both cats, and like had my camera off and my sound muted, except for when I had to chime in. I'd be like, also this, okay, bye. But I did it. I survived. I am mostly on the other side now.
Except for the sneezing.
Yeah, except for the sneezing. But, it's better.
You'll take what you can get.
I'm not actually going to leave all the sneezes in. That would be miserable. I wouldn't do that to you, dear listener. Well, Sara, enough of my dramatic moping. But something great that happened to you this week.
Something great is that the Wheel of Time announced that they were doing promotional events, I guess you could call it, in multiple cities a couple of days in advance of the premiere. And one of those cities is San Francisco. And what that means is that on Monday, I get to see the first 2 episodes of The Wheel of Time early.
Very exciting.
And I'm super stoked about that. I guess technically that hasn't happened yet. That'll be my good thing next week too. But my good thing is that I got the tickets. The next week will be I used the tickets.
We have oh no, what's the word? Co-custody. We have shared custody of another great thing, which is that we've done a couple of collabs recently, which one of which is definitely out, and the other one is either out or will be out soon. At the time of this episode's release, I can't do math. Whatever day it comes out is the day it comes out. Which will either be before or after this episode. We recently did a book shit and real shit with Dan Fitzgerald, which was a very fun sort of live Google Doc interview. And that's over on his blog, which we'll link to down below because I don't know the name of it. I'm sure it's Dan Fitzgerald.
I think it's Dan Fitzwrights.
Oh, that makes sense. That is his Twitter handle. But don't listen to me. Go to the show notes.
Don't listen to me either. Because, I was right. It is Dan Fitzwrights. Okay.
That's just good branding. Good and consistent. We also recently did a collab with SFF Addicts. That's hard to say.
It is hard to say. We talked with Adrian over at SFF Addicts about Y the Last Man, and we had very differing opinions, Lilly and I. So you should go and listen to that episode if it's out already, or listen to it when it comes out, because you get to hear lots of us arguing, friendly arguing.
Oh, poor Adrian had to moderate us. That's really not fair to put someone in that position.
He didn't know what he was getting into.
No. I think it was really fun, though. I think it turned out great. So
it was.
Keep an eye out or go listen right now, depending on how time works. Well, other than that, Sara, what are you drinking todnight?
I am just drinking tried and true red wine. What are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking, I guess I described it as a hot toddy earlier, but that's not true. It's a tea cocktail. I mixed Good Earth tea with some bourbon and honey, and it's delicious. You're not an herbal tea person, but Good Earth is delicious.
I mean, I like some herbal tea.
You might, well, you might like this herbal tea.
I've had Good Earth before.
Oh, okay. Well, it has a very long list of flavors, and it's delicious.
That's just the brand, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But this is their original flavor. It says original on it. It is cinnamon and orange and lemongrass and peppermint and anise seed and ginger.
That doesn't sound too bad. I might like that one.
It's mostly cinnamony. It's very good. Especially with a little bit of honey and a little bit of bourbon.
That sounds like a good drink to drink when you're recovering from a cold.
It's basically a hot toddy, yeah. It's mostly tea also. I'm not crazy. Sara, have you read? I guess we've actually had time to read, theoretically, since it took so dang long to record this episode.
Theoretically, I mean, upside to that is yes, I've read a couple of books. Downside is that no, I do not remember the books we're supposed to be talking about for this episode of Fiction Fans. So that'll be interesting.
That's what you said before we started doing our notes, and we still filled up a page of notes. So I think we'll be all right.
I got real mad about some things. I'll wait until we're actually discussing the books to talk about that. But I started rereading Sabriel by Garth Nix because we will be talking about his two recent releases in that series, or his two most recent releases in that series for I believe the next episode that we record. So the next episode, not necessarily the next episode that comes out. I don't know how our schedule works. But
everything's a mess.
Everything's a mess. We have a spreadsheet, and that tracks it for us, so I don't have to keep that information in my head. But I decided that I would go back and reread all of the Old Kingdom books because I haven't read them in years. If I try to just jump in to the last two books, I'm going to be very confused. And I have a couple of days off, so this is more doable than it would be normally.
Yeah, I'm not even trying.
Yeah. But it's nice because it's been so long since I read Sabriel that it's kind of like reading it for the first time. Like, I don't remember anything that happens. Mm-hmm. So that's fun.
I do remember liking her love interest quite a bit.
I think he's just been introduced. There has been more talk about penises than I expected.
Well, because he's naked, right?
Yeah, he's naked.
Yeah, because he was trapped as a statue or something.
Yeah, see, that's a lot more than I remembered. But also for like a young adult novel that I read probably when I was 12, I was not expecting there to be any talk about, circumcised penises. And you, Lily?
Oh, a lot of talk about circumcised penises. I've been reading Teen Wolf fan fiction.
If that checks out.
Yeah, I'm not going to say comfort read because that's weird, but just something about the short form, not super complex plot-wise. I mean, yeah, just incredibly smutty short stories was very nice when I managed to stay awake for more than an hour at a time.
It's a nice distraction from illness.
Yeah, or especially because my sleep schedule got all fucked up. So I would then go to bed and not be able to sleep for hours, partly because I couldn't breathe, but also because I had been napping all day. So I would just read on my phone, which is nice because it doesn't disturb Daniel, but it keeps me distracted from being physically miserable.
Which is very good.
Yes, it is. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to make you very angry.
I think we're here to make ourselves very angry.
I did not hate Sphere as much as you did.
I disliked Sphere for a variety of reasons. Sphere, by the way, if you haven't gathered, by Michael Crichton, is the book that we are going to be discussing. And before we dive into any of the conversation, I would like to say thank you to Bender, that's at Jack Claver, and our good friend Ben at Literature and Lo-Fi, for recommending that we read some Michael Crichton.
You're going to have to say thank you one more time for anyone to actually believe it.
Well, I was going to say, even though I hated it at the end of that sentence before you interrupted me.
It came across in your tone. Don't worry. I have all of the same issues with it that you did, but there were other elements of that book that appealed to me much more than they appealed to you, like ocean stuff.
Yeah, I mean, part of my issue with this book is that it's just not a genre that I care much for. I mean, ocean stuff is fine, but that doesn't...
specifically the deep sea exploration.
Yeah, I got so claustrophobic reading that.
Yeah, wasn't it great?
It was horrible. And then, like, this is heavy on the suspense, and that's just not something that I really enjoy. So it wasn't the book for me, just in terms of genre. Definitely wasn't the book for me in terms of characters.
Yeah, this book came so close to being enjoyable. For me, it had several things that were just like rubbing elbows with stuff I love. For example, it takes place very deep in the ocean. Love that. Love
Terrifying.
it.
Horrifying. Do not want.
It is what I would call classic science fiction in that it is using some of these tropes to philosophize about, the meaning of life or human existence or whatever. You know what I'm saying.
Human condition.
It's using science-y aspects to comment on reality a little bit more bluntly than I'm used to. There was just like straight up dissertations in this book, which I think is one of the appeals of Crichton. Like, I think that's something people like about him. I didn't mind it.
I wouldn't know.
I'm used to my science fiction commentary being a little bit more implied, but it was definitely interesting. The commentary he was making, except for the commentary on Beth.
Michael Crichton is unable to write a woman character as a person.
I feel like that's unfair to writers who can't write women characters but are trying their damnedest. I think Crichton doesn't understand that women are people.
Yeah, okay.
Just like, period.
I'm not going to argue that. I think you're right.
And being unable to write them like people is a symptom of that instead of just a writer's foible, if you will.
I had 3 pages of notes on Sphere in my notebook for this episode, and all of them, every single one, well, with the exception of like 2 notes, boils down to, fuck you, Crichton. I hate what you're doing with Beth. Or I hate how you've handled this aspect of Beth's character. Or I hate how you've handled how other people react to Beth.
Yeah. It's wild because Beth was not the only female character. There were the 2 mechanics, engineers.
There are actually a lot of female characters in this book because all of the supporting cast, essentially, who go down into the underwater habitat are women. And they were okay, possibly because they were background enough that he was like, I'll just write a male character, but say that they're a woman.
Yeah, they don't really have dialogue. And
yeah,
most of them don't have names. There are just the 2 that I'm thinking of that actually get names.
I mean, I think that maybe 3 of them get named or 4 of them get named, but they don't get a lot of screen time. They don't get a lot of dialogue. I'm not going to say something because that would be a spoiler.
Yeah.
And they were okay. Like, they weren't offensive, but just from the very beginning, when Crichton is describing the main character, Ted Fielding's wife, and her relationship with their daughter, I was kind of skeptical that he was going to be able to write a nuanced female character. And then we are introduced to Beth on like page 30, and her whole introduction focuses around her physicality and how she's like not attractive, but she walks seductively. And she has big thighs, and none of the male characters talk, like none of their introductions talk about that whatsoever.
Yeah, we don't know what anybody looks like except that Ted is packing a few extra pounds.
Yeah.
That's literally the only other physical description in the entire book. And then a hell of a lot about Beth's hips.
Mm-hmm. And then this just carries throughout the entire book. Like there's a comment about her body swinging sensuously, and I just I hated it. I hated it so much.
All of that is horrible, and I agree completely. But I think what bothered me the most was, okay, so there's a team of scientists sent to the bottom of the ocean to do science stuff. We're not going to talk about it. That's super spoilery. But they each have a different specialty. And Beth was a zoologist. And she doesn't know the word macerate.
Nope.
Like, are you fucking kidding me? That was my fuck you note. Like,
zoologists don't need to know words like that. What are you talking about, Lilly?
Like, she needed the psychologist to explain macerate to her. That is just garbage. Like, okay, all of the physicality stuff is bad, but she's not even mildly competent at her job either.
Yeah, I mean, like the text tries to portray that she is, but everything we're told about her is contradictory to that.
Yeah, by a lot. And I get that he was just trying to explain it to the reader, he being Crichton, but
he could have done it
like
another way.
Yeah. But there are some other conversations between characters that are clearly Crichton using those characters as a vehicle to explain something to the reader. And some of the more intense science theories, that's fine. He also had the specialist explaining it to the non-specialist.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think that works because, as you say, it's the character whose field of study is that area who gets to explain it, not the psychologist telling the zoologist what macerate means.
Yeah. And then there's also that goofy moment where someone doesn't know who Medusa is.
So again, that's Beth who doesn't know who Medusa is. And we were saying earlier off recording that that's a little more hand waveable because she's a zoologist, she's not necessarily a student of mythology, but I feel like the fact that it's Beth who doesn't know that says something. Like both times there's something that I would expect someone to know, and it's Beth who doesn't know it.
Yeah.
Like why couldn't one of the male scientists not know who Medusa is if he wanted to have that conversation?
Yep. It just all adds up to a very unpleasant experience. And that's really too bad because, like I said, there were a lot of elements to this book that I really enjoyed, but they were all overshadowed with how much the characters sucked.
Yeah, this would never be, I mean, like I said, this would never be a favorite book of mine just because it's not a genre that I enjoy. The thought of being that far under the ocean really does terrify me.
I love it.
but I spent this entire book angry. I wanted to throw it across the room. If it hadn't been a podcast book, I would have not finished it. And I don't say that lightly. Like I tend to really make an effort to finish books that I've started, but if
you hadn't finished it, you wouldn't have known how truly horrendous it gets. You would have missed out on all of that rage.
Would I have missed out, or would I be living happier?
Well, let's not talk about that yet. Let's talk about, we can bring up the victim blaming, right? That starts very early on. That's practically part of Beth's introduction.
Yeah, I think we can talk about the victim blaming.
Or at least the beginning of it, because there's so much. Like,
oh, jeez.
And it's not even just the characters. The tone of the conversations feels very much like Crichton feels smug about how edgy he's being. Like, he's pointing out this huge revelation that maybe Beth was asking for it the whole time. And it's just like, no.
I think I misspoke earlier when I said Ted Fielding was the main character. He's not. I was getting him confused with Norman. Norman somebody or other.
Oh, yeah. Ted is the very enthusiastic one.
Yeah, Ted is the very enthusiastic one. But I feel like the reason why the victim blaming comes up as, or comes off as being Crichton endorsing that viewpoint and not just the characters is because Norman is so obviously Crichton's author avatar in the story.
I think it goes even farther than that, but we can follow up on that conversation in a little bit. Sara, would you share that sentence, that conversation, that very, very early on one that is just kind of introduces the tone of how we're going to be dealing with Beth for the rest of this book?
Oh, it's page 131. Okay. I guess we didn't have this in our notes document.
Well, we didn't need to because we both knew exactly the quote we were talking about.
Except we couldn't find it.
We didn't know what page it was on, but we both knew the quote. And I thought it was earlier. Yeah, that's like the first quarter of the book, right? That's pretty early.
Yeah, it's I would say it's the first quarter, or at least the first third. So Norman is talking with Harry, who's the mathematician in this excursion, about Beth and how she did her graduate work in this one scientist lab, and they had a relationship, and the scientist, when they broke up, the scientist took all of her research as his own and published it, and did very well off of it.
Oh, so it's a discussion about the inherent exploitation of academia?
Very nice, Harry said. So now she lifts weights? Well, she feels mistreated, and I can see her point. Yeah, Harry said, but the thing is, lie down with dogs, get up with fleas. You know what I mean? Jesus, Beth said, returning. This is like the girl who's raped is always asking for it. Is that what you're saying? No, Harry said, still lifting up floor panels, following the wires. But sometimes you got to ask what the girl is doing in a dark alley at 3 a.m. in a bad part of town. I was in love with him. It's still a bad part of town. I was 22 years old. How old do you have to be? Up yours, Harry. Harry shook his head. You find the wires, Butch?
Yeah, the fact that, I mean, maybe it's not clear from that very small snippet of dialogue, but it's very clear that Harry is the one who won that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just, that's just textbook. Like, there's nothing more to say.
Yeah. Also, again, the fact that we had so much trouble finding this quote, not because we didn't know what quote or didn't know what page, but because there are so many other goddamn quotes that are about this, that fit the same theme, that have the same victim blaming tone, really says a lot, I think.
And it's just so smugly like,
she brought this upon herself.
Yeah, not like, how am I? There's too many negatives in this sentence I'm trying to say, but it's like pro victim blaming. Like, all these women think victim blaming is a thing, but they're actually just tricking themselves and they need to take responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. These characters sucked.
There are some cool ocean creatures, though.
Were they cool enough to make up for how awful everyone was?
No. Give me my sea sponges. Stop being weird. That's it. That's just what I wanted to shout at this book the whole time. Bioluminescence? Yes. Rape apologist? No.
I feel like we're going to have a hard time answering the question, why should someone read this book?
You should read this book if you like classic sci-fi, if you think ocean stuff, deep sea stuff is cool, and you aren't gonna throw up in your mouth when you read stuff like that on every page. I mean, I'm sure there's people who don't care, or are able to overlook it better than we can.
Probably. I mean, Michael Crichton is a hugely popular author.
Yeah. Maybe this is just a bad example.
Looking on the internet, I don't get that impression.
Yeah.
But it's true. I haven't read any other Michael Crichton books, so I cannot comment on whether or not this is typical of his writing of women.
Yeah.
I am marginally interested in reading Jurassic Park. I've never actually watched the movies.
Oh, well, we got to fix that.
But I think that has such cultural cachet that it might be interesting. But at the same time, this has kind of put me off reading any Michael Crichton ever.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pillar of science fiction. So if you're doing an exploration of the genre, yeah, throw in a Crichton book. But prepare to be frustrated.
To avoid spoilers for Sphere, skip to 4138.
Okay, can we talk about the truly horrendous piece about Beth now? This is now spoiler section.
Yeah, so this is the quote that we hinted at.
Well, a little bit of context now that we're in the spoiler section. They're at the bottom of the ocean because the government, the military, found something and they want to explore it. First, they thought it was an alien spaceship, and then it turned out it was actually a time-traveling ship. But then it turned out that there was an alien artifact on the time travel ship. So okay, that was fun.
Can I interject though? Because the time-traveling spaceship is from 2043.
Also, yes. And when they talk about their records, because they're keeping records of everything that happens, just in case something goes tits up. Spoiler alert, it does. They say, well, how much memory does the records computer have? Oh, it's got 10 giga. It's got a ton. First of all, giga? Second of all, 10?
Also, whenever anyone says max will be here is 72 hours, here being, miles and miles under the sea, that's not gonna be true.
Yes, indeed, everything goes wrong. They do end up getting into the sphere, this alien artifact, and it is eventually discovered that it gives people the power to control the world through belief. And that's like the very simple, over-the-top explanation. If you want all of the philosophizing, you are just going to have to thumb through rape apologies till you get to the conversations about that. One of which
so Norman is essentially psychoanalyzing Beth, who has gone into the sphere. He felt a shuddering chill. Beth, with her lack of self-esteem, her deep core of self-hate, had gone inside the sphere, and now she was acting with the power of the sphere, but without stability to her thoughts. Beth saw herself as a victim who struggled against her fate, always unsuccessfully. Beth was victimized by men, victimized by the establishment, victimized by research, victimized by reality. In every case, she failed to see how she had done it to herself. Thanks, Michael Crichton.
And that right there is why you can't hand-wave it away by saying it's just the other characters. We find out that Beth is the real big bad because she has been causing all of the bad shit to happen to their research facility.
To be fair, Harry caused some of the bad stuff.
Did he? I thought it was...
he caused the squid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he did cause some of the bad stuff. It's just
I thought we found out that was Beth as well.
No, it's Harry because he was the one who was deathly afraid of squid.
But they all loved 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
No, he did not like it. It terrified him.
Okay. Maybe I just misread that part then.
I think, yeah, like he causes the earlier issues. It's Beth who causes the later issues.
I thought the squid comes back when he's unconscious, though. And so they realize it couldn't have been him.
I don't think so.
Okay.
But also, it's been like a week and a half or 2 weeks since I read this book. I've read other stuff. I did not keep the details of this book in my head because I hated this book.
It doesn't matter. Okay, Beth is the one doing 90% of the chaos.
Beth is also the one at the very end who keeps her powers.
Right. And so all of this is the literal plot of the book is saying this woman is so unhinged that like her mental instability is killing people, literally murdering people because she thinks she's a victim. So she wills it into being to make herself a victim. And that is not the opinion of the other character. Well, it is. We're being told through the eyes of Norman, but that's the literal plot of the book. That's the big reveal at the end. That's Crichton. Like that, you can't. Yeah. I will always try to find an angle where it's actually a character being shitty and not the author. But there's just no way.
Yeah. And I mean, that's totally possible. Like authors can write shitty characters without those shitty views reflecting the actual views of the author. Like that's a thing. Authors do that. Totally allowed. This is not that.
No, it's really not.
This is Crichton espousing the views that his characters have.
Writing a whole ass novel about how victim blaming is not a thing.
500 pages. 500 pages.
Like, how am I even supposed to enjoy the cool concept of an alien race that gives people the power to wish things into existence just to test if people can handle that power responsibly, if it's being done in this like awful garbage context? It sucks the fun out of the whole book.
Yeah, you can't. Also, while we're on the subject of Beth and garbage takes about Beth, I do think that part of this is foreshadowing for Beth having gone into the sphere, and the book foreshadowing that way before we actually find out. But also the focus on how like she's beautiful once she's been in the sphere is really gross.
Oh, see, at the time, I thought it was very cool because we still thought Harry was the one controlling everything. Oh God, my nose is so stuffy. I'm sorry. Because we still thought Harry was the one controlling everything. So that could have been a really cool commentary on how Beth is being objectified by the men around her, and they see a woman as only something that is around to be appealing to them instead of a good scientist, which we never actually see her do. But no, it was Beth doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it was so close to being cool. Crichton, you got so close.
In sleep, she looked quite beautiful. It was odd after all the time down here she should seem so radiant. It was as if the harshness had gone out of her features. Her nose did not seem so sharp anymore. The line of the mouth was softer, fuller. He looked at her arms, which had been sinewy, veins bulging. The muscles seemed smoother, more feminine somehow. And then, about 15 pages later, she leaned back and turned her head up, and her high cheekbones caught the light. She looked almost like a model, elegant and handsome and strong.
Like, without any of the other shit, I could get over that.
If that had been...
if that was it.
I mean, I was going to say, if that, like you initially thought, if that had been because the men were objectifying her and their perception of her was making her, like, quote unquote, more beautiful, I think that would have been a good, like, twist, a good commentary, but no.
Except in Michael Crichton's world, nothing bad ever happens to women unless they do it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Man, the giant squid was so fun, though.
The giant squid was terrifying.
I loved it.
And the little things that killed one of the side characters that got in her suit and killed, like, that was all terrifying.
Yes, it was fantastic.
It was not for me. That was not for me.
Right, and that's totally fair.
Yeah, but I can understand someone enjoying those aspects. Like, my taste is not your taste, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm complaining because I should have loved this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you've heard the analogy of a shit sandwich. Someone makes you the most perfect, delicious sandwich, but there's a teeny tiny little piece of shit in it. Doesn't matter how good the sandwich is, that still makes it a shit sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like, I could have loved this book, but there was a kind of a lot of shit in it.
There was never any chance that I would love this book, but I could have at least understood why people love it. I could have tolerated it.
There are definitely things that this book does well. They are just completely overshadowed by the core concept of the plot. That's the thing. It's not even just him having a bad female character. It, like, the entire conclusion of the book is predicated on this concept.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
it's
I can't
inescapable.
get over that. Yeah.
Like it's everywhere. It permeates the entire novel. It's not just like one discrete thread that you could ignore.
Yeah, even if it was just those dialogue pieces, like, okay, you read those parts fast and you move on.
Right.
I'm capable of doing that. But it's like the whole fucking point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, the aliens sounded really fun. I'm just sad. All of the good parts of this book just make me sad.
I do think the aliens sounded fun. I also did wonder why in the very beginning of this book, before the action actually takes place, Norman was called to create an alien like contact plan by the US government, because that just seemed, their preoccupation with aliens seemed weird to me.
I mean, I think that's a thing though. I do like.
Yeah, but Norman was confused.
Right.
Norman was like, this is weird.
Right, because he doesn't get how the government works.
I don't know. I just like it seemed to me, it seemed like a vehicle for moving the plot along rather than a thing that the government did.
I mean, yeah. That didn't bother me as much though.
Yeah. I mean, it bothered me a little bit. Not as much as the rest of the book did.
One of the conversations in this book is about whatever aliens created this sphere. And I really loved that they considered that it's not about humans. Right? Like, did they make this sphere to test people? Or is it just a complete side effect that it happens to affect humans this way? And it has nothing to do with us, because why would aliens give a shit about humans? And I really appreciated that, instead of a human-centric concept of aliens, right? It was really good. There were some really good things. He ruined Squid.
Listeners, the face Lilly is making right now. The very disappointed face.
The big old eye looking through the window gave me chills.
I mean, there were some good concepts in this book. I think that an author who actually thinks women are people could take the concepts and take the plot, ignoring the victim blaming bits, and make something really good out of it. I don't think Crichton, quite evidently, was that author.
I was going to say a modern adaptation of this. Oh, I think there is one in the works, actually. I could see it being very good, because because you still have the Beth issue, which is like the whole fucking point of the book. Maybe they could get around that. I don't know.
But an adaptation can change that. Like, adaptations can change things.
That's kind of a major thing to change. Maybe if it was less victim blamey and it was just Beth who happened to be psycho. Like, even that would be okay, instead of a commentary on all rape.
Or make the Beth character a man and the Harry character a woman.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, like I think that there are ways to do it without bringing all of that baggage to the story.
Yeah.
And I think there are ways to make it good. I still wouldn't enjoy it probably, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't be good.
Exactly. So I do think when I was Googling, I do think I saw that there is something, a miniseries or something. But
Oh, so like a TV adaptation, not a...
I don't remember. Let me look.
Because there was a movie made based off of Sphere.
There was. Okay.
There was, with Samuel L. Jackson as Harry, I believe. I think critics panned it. I haven't seen it. I mean, but
oh yeah, a 98 movie. Okay. HBO is doing an adaptation.
Oh, interesting. I will probably not be watching.
HBO is doing an adaptation based on the 1998 movie? Based on the book? No, they could just base it straight on the book. That's okay.
I mean, I vaguely remember from reading Wikipedia before I read Sphere that the movie makes some big changes.
That could be a good thing, though. Depending on what the changes are.
Yeah, depending on what the changes are. I don't know.
So I will say it's not exactly the same, but it's a very similar atmosphere. But if you want a spooky underwater story of where things go wrong and there might be something weird happening.
No, thank you.
Just watch the movie Underwater with Kristen Stewart. It's great. Love that movie.
No, thank you. I'll pass.
Watch that. Don't read this book. Like, you slap Kristen Stewart in anything and I'll watch it, but also throw in some underwater shenanigans. They made that movie for me.
Well, I can tell you they definitely didn't make it for me.
No. I think we're done with Sphere. I'm done with this book. Let's put it behind us.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about Sphere anymore.
I just want to talk about underwater now.
Well, there's no underwater in moving pictures, but it does take place by an ocean.
That's true. We get to see some lobsters.
Yeah, we see an underwater city.
So that counts.
If you couldn't tell, this book that we're discussing is Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett. Our next stop in our journey to the center of the Discworld.
I tricked you into saying it.
I've said it before, I think. I just normally make you say it because you do silly voices. I'm not going to do a silly voice for this.
Well, my whole voice in this episode is silly because I can't breathe through my nose, so I feel like the effect would be ruined.
Just cut in a clip of you saying Journey to the Center of the Discworld from a previous episode.
Journey to the center. I forgot how much I liked this book.
It's a good book. It's not one of my favorites, but it's a really solid book.
I find that I forget about the standalones in the Discworld series, which is too bad.
I reread Discworld in its entirety more than you do, so.
Yes. I had only read this book once before, and I remembered it being charming, but I really liked it.
This is also the book with all of the movie references. All of them. Every movie.
Yeah.
It's all referenced.
Well, because it takes place in Hollywood.
But the nice thing about this is, like, this is really how you do real world references in a fantasy novel, right? Because all of these, if you understand them, they add to your enjoyment and you're like, oh, hey, that's a joke. I'm getting the in-joke, you know? But if you don't get it, it doesn't detract from your enjoyment.
This book follows the creation of the movie industry in Discworld. But of course, there's something else going on. So they end up recreating, or referencing, not exactly recreating, a bunch of classic Hollywood movies. And so that's fun.
It's a fun book. It's a very fun book.
The main character is likable and funny. I love that he tries to avoid all work always.
Hashtag relatable.
Yeah. He wasn't douchey like some of the protagonists have been, or whiny or anything. So he was like actually fun to read about.
This is also the book that introduces a lot of the core Unseen University wizarding cast. So that's cool. We get to see Ridcully for the first time.
Is this really the first time?
Yeah.
I thought
this is the first time that we see Ridcully. It's the first time we see the Bursar. It's the first time we see Stibbons. Like we've already met Rincewind and we've already met the librarian.
We've met the librarian, yes. Wow. The Discworld fandom wiki article for Mustrum Ridcully is like 30 pages long. Oh, we met Ponder Stibbons, who I thought we had met earlier. I know you just said that.
I did just say that.
But we get the real one now and not the prototype.
Also, can we talk about how Ridcully is parody or spoof of Radagast the Brown?
Yeah, I mean, is that just because they're both the roughneck wizards of their...
Well, it's partially that, but a search of their records turned up Ridcully the Brown.
Right.
So they have that. And then there's the whole bit, a country wizard, back to the thingamajigs, the roots of wizardry. Jolly old boy with a pipe and twinkly eyes. Sort of chap who can tell one herb from another, roams the high forest with every beast his brother kind of thing. Sleeps under the stars like as not. Knows what the wind is saying, we shouldn't wonder. Got a name for all the trees, you can bank on it. Speaks to the birds, too.
That's not actually what Ridcully is, though. That is what the wizards think he's going to be.
Right. No, but that's my point. He's a parody or a spoof on Radagast because the wizards think that he's going to be like Radagast.
But he ends up being...
And then it turns out... And then he'd arrived, and it turned out that Ridcully the Brown did speak to the birds. In fact, he shouted at birds. And what he normally shouted was, "Winged you bastard!" The beasts of the field and fowls of the air did know Ridcully the Brown. They got so good at pattern recognition that, for a radius of about 20 miles around the Ridcully estates, they'd run, hide, or in desperate cases, attack violently at the mere sight of a pointy hat.
Yes, he's excellent. I guess that feels more like a reference to Radagast than he's actually a...
Okay, maybe my wording is wrong, but like he's referencing Radagast the Brown.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. A parody in the sense that you think you're getting Radagast and what you get is Ridcully.
Mm-hmm. We also got Cut Me Own Throat Dibbler, who we have seen before, but this is the first book where he's like a main character.
This is also really the first book where he entirely feels like himself, I think.
Yeah, we get glimpses of him trying to sell sketchy street food, but we actually see him in his entrepreneurial glory.
I'm not sure, in the previous books, I'm not entirely sure that we saw him selling pies before now. I could be wrong about that.
It was definitely food stuff. It might have been food, like sausages in a bun or something.
It was food stuff, but it just, when I read this book, I was like, oh, it's the cut me own throat that I expect.
We also have a couple of very charming dog characters.
There's Gaspode the Wonder Dog.
He's a little ragamuffin mutt, and he's very sweet. He's not sweet at all, but he can talk, which is cute.
Every book needs a talking companion.
It's true. There's also Laddie, who cannot speak and is, I would say, very dumb, but has dog level of intelligence. That's fair.
I mean, if you have dogs, you know that some dogs have more intelligence than others. Yes. Laddie's kind of on the lower end of that spectrum.
But he's the dumb, handsome movie star. It works.
Yeah.
We also have two entire female love interests, but that were actually...
Not for the same character.
No, that's true. But I actually liked both of them.
Well, it was nice to go from Sphere to a book where it felt like the female characters were people.
Even Ruby, the rock troll.
Ruby was great, though.
She was definitely my favorite. She's the lounge singer at the troll bar.
And she's really a minor character, but she does shine.
She really does. Detritus, who is a recurring troll character, although he just does bodyguard stuff, we don't get much from him, falls in love with Ruby and is trying to woo her, first in the traditional troll fashion, but then she informs him that this is Hollywood and I need a modern man. And so he tries to do what she asks, but doesn't really understand what a bouquet of flowers is.
Oogra.
But it's an improvement from throwing a rock at her head.
Well, and then I just enjoy, is this spoilers if I talk about how their relationship ends? up at the end of the book?
Nah.
Okay. I'm going to read this quote because it's a good quote.
Minor spoiler, but not for plot stuff.
Not for plot stuff, yeah. So Detritus and Ruby are at the bar that Ruby works at. Without shifting her gaze, Ruby shot out a tree trunk arm, spun him around, and pushed him through the wall. "Kiss me, you mad fool," she said. Detritus's brow wrinkled. "What?" he said. Ruby sighed. "Well, so much for the human way." She picked up a chair and hit him scientifically over the head with it. A smile spread across his face, and he slumped forward. She picked him up easily and slung him over her shoulder. If Ruby had learned anything in Hollywood, it was that there was no use in waiting around for Mr. Right to hit you with a brick. You had to make your own bricks.
Good for you, Ruby.
Good for you.
Love her. You know what you want and get it. So Victor is the main male character. He's the main character who accidentally stumbles into being a leading man in Hollywood. And Ginger is the actress that he is cast with, and they do a bunch of very passionate smooching scenes, and they're not necessarily into each other right away, but they go through adventures together and grow and bond.
I mean, my one issue with this book is that all of the characters assume that they're madly in love with each other just because they're coworkers who smooch.
Well, I think that was making fun of the world and how they don't really get how movies work.
Gaspode, though. Gaspode should know better.
Yeah, that's true. But he was also not wrong. They do fall in love eventually.
I mean, he's not wrong in the sense that, yes, they do fall in love, but they are not in love just because they argue and make out with each other for work.
Oh, yeah, no, of course, completely.
And that was his argument.
Yeah.
They argue and make out with each other for work.
Yeah.
That's not what being in love is. I know you're a dog, but still.
I liked her overall. I have some questions. Not questions.
Reservations.
Yeah, I think, she wasn't frustrating to read about. Let's make that perfectly clear. But as far as, okay, so she's no Sybil, right? She's not that great. But she sure is better than Isabel. So.
Yeah.
On the scale of Pratchett women, she's up there.
Yeah, I mean, I liked Ginger well enough. I enjoyed reading the dialogue and arguments between Ginger and Victor. So overall, I would say that she works for me as a character.
She absolutely works for me as a character. I just when I spend so much time shitting on his female characters earlier, I feel like I need to figure out, or I need to decide for myself if these characters are actually good or just better.
Actually good or good in comparison.
Yeah, I do think I have landed on I think she's a good character.
Yeah,
well-written character.
I don't necessarily think she's a perfect character, but I think overall she's a good character.
Yeah. Also, can we talk about those poor little imps that almost got their feet nailed to the floor?
There's a lot of horrible working conditions in this book.
Well, I kind of loved that. I didn't love it, but it's very
I think
extremely critical of Hollywood.
I think it's a great commentary on Hollywood, but also I feel bad for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I loved that he didn't pull his punches. It's exploitative and not a healthy industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Hollywood and Hollywood both.
Yes. At least I don't think Hollywood is nailing anybody's feet to the floor.
As far as we know.
Yeah, it's true. So to clarify, the way movie cameras work in this world, well, the way all cameras work is they trap imps in a little box and they paint pictures very quickly of the stuff that they see. So in this, they have a bunch of imps in a little box and they have to paint, right, like like film, images on each square of the cellophane or whatever. They call it something else. Cello something.
Yeah.
But because they're trying to swing the camera around to follow the action, the imps keep tumbling around inside the box, and one of the proposed solutions is nailing their feet to the floor, and that's sad. Poor little guys. I don't think that actually ends up happening. It's just a seriously considered solution.
I mean, I don't think it doesn't end up happening, if that makes sense. I don't think that they actually tell us in the book what they end up doing to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So it depends on your interpretation.
Well, I like to think it didn't happen.
Given how they treat the imps throughout the series, I'm not convinced it didn't happen.
Yeah. I'm torn on whether this would be a good starting place or not.
So I think it depends on what you enjoy. If you're really on the fence about Discworld, but you're really into Hollywood and classic Hollywood, like Golden Age Hollywood, I think this is a good place to start. Otherwise, I think this is a good place to be your like third or fourth Discworld book.
It definitely feels like Discworld.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like Discworld. It's a standalone, so you don't have to have a whole bunch of context. For my personal taste, I like it, but I don't enjoy it enough to recommend it as like this be the first book you read, unless, like I said, you're super into Hollywood.
Or even just a movie buff.
Yeah, or a movie buff. I mean, I guess I was taking those to be the same thing, but
well, there's definitely overlap. I feel like this book hits the classic movie buff, but also some of the golden age of Hollywood behind the scenes drama, and it kind of hits both of those points.
Yeah. But so I think that that's generally where I fall. Like, if you really like that stuff, read this first. If you're just okay on that stuff, maybe try another Discworld book first and then come back to this. But you don't have to wait until you've read, 15 Discworld books to get here.
No, yeah, I think it's a fun book. You don't really need to get a bunch of references about the world.
Yeah.
It also doesn't take place. Well, no, there's a Ankh-Morpork in it.
Yeah, there is Ankh-Morpork in it, but like most Discworld books, you get enough explanation that you have a basic understanding of Ankh-Morpork. You have a basic understanding of the wizards.
Oh, yeah, I meant from the other direction. Does this work as an introduction if you don't actually learn anything about Ankh-Morpork?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so, because you don't learn much about Ankh-Morpork, but if you decide to continue with the series, other books will give you that introduction.
You get the vibe, and there's a bunch of really fun unseen university scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely hits that, I would say.
I mean, the wizards are fantastic in this.
Their bumbling hijinks are excellent.
They're a lot of fun to read about.
So I would say this is a good early book, and possibly first book if it aligns with your interests.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
To avoid spoilers for moving pictures, skip to 10442.
Okay, so here is why I was a little bit hesitant to declare Ginger a good female character. Her whole deal is that she's getting possessed. So it's hard to argue that she has agency when she spends most of the book being controlled by other forces.
I agree with you there. But on the other hand, I really enjoy that the story builds up this idea that her possession is bad and that they need to stop it. And it turns out at the very end of the book that actually, like, she was being possessed by some, it was some like ancestral memory, handed down, like her relatives worked in the original Hollywood or whatever. And she has this innate understanding of the fact that danger is coming and she needs to do something to save Hollywood, or not to save Hollywood, to save the world.
From Hollywood.
From Hollywood, yeah. So I kind of like that it turns the whole idea of what her possession is really about on its head. And I do enjoy that, but that doesn't take away from the fact necessarily that, yeah, her character is based on her being possessed.
Well, I actually do think that changes it entirely because we do get a little bit of her character. We know that she was very driven to become something other than she was a milkmaid before.
Mm-hmm.
And so she had the ambition to go out and make something of her life. And that's wonderful. That is enough with her banter to add up to an acceptable character.
Mm-hmm.
Except when I thought that her ambition made her vulnerable to possession to destroy the world, because then that kind of destroys the whole yay, she's ambitious thing. But then it comes back around. So yay, she's ambitious. And that isn't a character flaw that's going to destroy the world.
Yeah.
I liked her.
I mean, I really enjoy the fact that if they had let her do what she was trying to do while she was, sleepwalking, pretty much the entire book probably could have been averted. I mean, we don't know that for certain.
Yeah.
But it's heavily implied. I'm like, I love that. I think that's great because that's really not what you expect at all.
Oh, yeah, no. And so that's fun and interesting. So it takes it from, another possession thing to something cool that's being done with it. And that makes her an interesting character instead of a trope.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good as Ruby, but that's unfair. Ruby doesn't have nearly as much page time.
Yeah, I mean, Ginger gets a lot more page time.
Yeah.
Ruby is not a main character, and Ginger very definitely is. I do always think that Laddie and Gaspode are going to die at the end of this book. And they don't, and I love it. But I do always think that they're going to die.
Oh, you can't kill dogs. I'm just going to say, don't do it. It doesn't make you cool.
They have a whole scene with death. And then they get saved, and I'm very grateful. But I
just don't need that.
No, I don't need it either.
It doesn't improve a book ever.
I don't mind Pratchett hinting at it or, making us think that they're going to die. But I'm glad that they get rescued in the very end.
Yeah, I don't mind flirting with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't need it to actually happen. So that's good. And that's the kind of thing that makes Discworld such I'm going to call it an easy read, because you don't have to deal with shit like sweet puppies dying.
Yeah, I mean, Discworld does cover some really heavy subjects, but in an accessible, you're not necessarily going to be spending all afternoon crying your eyes out kind of way.
You never feel bad after finishing one of these books.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate.
Yeah. I can end on some good quotes.
Let's do one. Oh, the happy to see me joke.
But they're all so good. I mean, I don't think that this should just be we read quotes at each other. The happy to see you joke is good, but the spink joke is good. But also the today is the Monday, which on Friday night was a comfortably long way off quote is really relatable. And then the inside every old person is a young person wondering how they got there or whatever is a really good quote too. Yes, this was just a way of me.
Yeah, you just read them all.
hammering in.
All right, give me spink.
Okay. So, Cut Me on Throat Dibbler is talking with a poster artist.
Oh, he cons his way into becoming a producer. First of all. He's a movie producer and it's great.
And he's talking with a poster artist about what he wants for the poster for this new movie that he's doing that Ginger and Victor are starring in. The artist looked down at the paper. She has the face, he read, of a spink.
It's a good word.
Right, said Dibbler. Right. I thought maybe Sphinx. Will you listen to the man? Said Dibbler, talking to the sky again. He glared at the artist. She doesn't look like two of them, does she? One spink, two sphinx. Now get on with it. I want those posters all around the city first thing tomorrow.
Spink. It's just cute.
It's just good.
So, I don't know if this is a words are weird or a pet peeve. Maybe a little bit of both. I read a quote from Ritual of Bone, I believe.
Yes, by Lee C. Conley in our final spooky month episode.
But it's not his fault that I have this pet peeve. Dan Fitzgerald, at Dan Fitzwrites, sent me the sweetest message asking if he heard correctly that something about a shield and a buffet and zombie hunting. And I, like a complete asshole, explained that, that word actually also means to hit, like buffeted by the wind. And then luckily, I'm an asshole, but I'm not a confident one, because I did also look it up to make sure that was another definition of the word. And I discovered that those words are not pronounced the same.
No, they are not pronounced the same.
They're spelled identically.
If I had entirely realized what you were saying when we recorded, I would have commented. But I was not following along with the quote.
Buffeted by the wind.
Buffeted.
Yeah.
Buffeted by the wind. It's always been buffeted.
I guess I've never heard that word out loud before. Anyway, shout out to the gentlest correction I've ever gotten.
Dan is a gentleman and a scholar.
But also, what the fuck, English? That's the same word. How am I? Okay, if you know that the word buffet is a thing, and then you see another word that's the exact same word, why would I assume it's pronounced differently?
Well, you have to know that buffet is also a thing.
Well, I knew the definition was a thing.
No. I mean, you have to know the pronunciation of
Right.
buffet is a thing.
Right. It doesn't sound like a real word. It sounds like it belongs in the Little Miss Muffet poem.
It just makes me think of Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, yeah, that too. Is that the missing piece? Should I have known it because of Jimmy Buffett? Did I always secretly think he pronounced his last name wrong? Maybe that. Anyway, so that episode is going to live on forever. So that's great.
But on the other hand, this episode will live on forever too, with your very public retraction.
I almost want to edit that episode description with like a hey, I goofed.
I mean, you could. We haven't edited any episode descriptions when I say very wrong things about books.
That's true. That's unfair for me to get that power. Although you are able to do that if you want.
I could.
It's fine. Hey, I learned something new. And isn't that what life is all about?
Exactly.
That's my silver lining. Did I sound like a goober? Yes.
I mean, bold of you to assume that we haven't sounded like goobers at other points in this podcast.
Yeah, but usually I know when it's happening. It's okay if I'm in on it.
Well, there is that.
So this is a combination. Those words are very weird. And also pet peeve. Why you do this to me? Language. Not Dan. Hey, Dan, thank you for being the only person to correct me. And not just like letting me pronounce that word wrong for the rest of my life. Because actually that would be worse, I think.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us, especially about Sphere. I want to hear why everyone thinks we're wrong, even though we're not. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
And when Lilly says, tell us why we're wrong, what she means is Sara handles all of our social media. So really, you'll be telling Sara why we're wrong.
That's true. But I get the notifications. I can see. I just don't reply.
You also get the emails, so you could email us.
Yeah, email me why we're wrong and tweet at Sara why we're wrong.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated, especially the spherical ones. Bye.
Bye.